Is faith and religion a kind of mental illness? Do you have faith? Are you religious? Are you spiritual? Are you crazy? Let's talk about that. Well, hello, I'm Carlton Pearson, and welcome to Streaming Consciousness or Expanded Consciousness, where each time we meet, I like to help you or encourage you to extend the reach of your thinking, to rethink. The Greek word for repent, metanoi, means to rethink or to think again after you've thought, to reconsider. In the scriptures, and I grew up around the church. I've been in the church all my life. I've majored in biblical literature, English Bible, minored in theology and historical studies, and I consider myself a spiritual person or a religious person, or some may even call it superstitious person. And I want to talk about that today. These are really delicate, tender, sensitive areas to discuss because if you've been following me for the last several years, you know I've rethought a whole lot and what I think about God and heaven and hell and scriptures and crucifixion and blood and resurrection and the sacred tenets of the Christian faith. I've questioned some of them. I've re-explained and represented some of them, and I've queried, and I'm still looking, and I'm 62 years old, and I'm expanding and growing, and I like where I am. It's a very intriguing time because I'm both wondering, W-O-N-D-E-R, and wandering, W-A-N-D-E-R, as if through a desert place or a less familiar place. Not unfamiliar to my spirit because I feel very much at one with who I am and where I'm going, but psychologically and customarily, based on the sentimentalities of my past and the cultural iconoclasms of my past, my religion, my parents, the upbringing, all of that is being confronted. And I'm thinking, and you may be thinking too, because I think millions of people in this age of Aquarius, and there was a time when I would not even refer to a sign of the zodiac. This comes from the Greek word zao, or where we get the word, or zoe, zoology, the animal sentient in humankind. This age of Aquarius is called an age of enlightenment. And it happens to go right along with the whole idea of the internet and the information highway. And it's like the History Channel. I spend hours watching the History Channel. I even look at things like ancient aliens and the conspiracies around UFOs and extraterrestrial conspiracies. And is there another world? And what is this one? And how much is real? And how much is an illusion? And is the gospel the greatest story ever told, or is it just the greatest story ever sold and we bought into it? And what does that mean? And how does my relationship with Jesus or my concept of Christ change? Has it changed? If it has, in what way? Is it detrimental to me? Do I feel more enhanced, or do I feel intimidated or demeaned or diminished in any way? And I can say, no, I don't. I feel expanded and augmented by this new way of thinking. My love for the concept of Christ, the principles and purpose of Jesus. A lot of the way I've taught it, I've altered, but my basic love for the teachings of Jesus and the consciousness of Christ, and I see Jesus and Christ as two different things. I like the way Anton Mesmer says that Jesus is the man, Christ is the science. And I'll kind of tie that into this whole insanity that we call religion. And I will title this, Is Faith and or Religion a Kind of Mental Illness? When I say illness, I don't just mean sickness, I mean an instability, a kind of insecurity. Is this whole idea of faith and religion a big awkward question or query? What are we looking for? Why do we believe the kinds of things we believe, and why do they appeal to us in a conscious way? Why are they important? Religious people tend to be superstitious people. And they believe in things less material, but the less material things they believe in aren't immaterial. They don't consider them to be irrelevant or, non-consequential. We people believe, and billions of people believe on this planet believe that religion or spirituality matters. Whether it's Hindu, Muslim, Jewish, Buddhist, Christian, Catholic Christian, Protestant or protesting Christian, agnostic, atheist, everybody believes in something, even if it's what they don't believe in or the fact that they don't believe. Religion to most people is perceived as relevant, profoundly important, and some call this superstition. If you believe in angels or spirits or gods or demons or demogods or demon gods or voices and entities, Martians, aliens, that's sort of superstitious. And most religions, if not all of them, are based on that. Even the more earthly ones like Wiccan, witch religion that believes in the environment and Mother Earth and hugging trees and taking care of nature, and that's a sort of a very limited definition. But superstition means excessively credulous belief in or reverence for supernatural beings or less than natural beings. Super means above, something other than ether, out there, something non-normal or less normal. Okay, superstition is considered to be excessively credulous belief. Not just belief, but excessively credulous belief. A widely held but unjustified belief in a supernatural causation leading to certain consequences of an action or an event or a practice based on that belief. So it's sort of abstract, and most people, even people who are not necessarily religious but like to trip out on drugs or kind of have these hallucinatory experiences or out-of-body experiences or in-between world experiences or get high, mind-altering drugs, they go someplace, they transcend or transform or transit. The whole idea of a transistor radio and what it means to be able to get signals from and tune into other frequencies, and what's the term? I can't remember right now. Where you go out or you kind of lose yourself. It's an out of this world experience. We like that. All the paranormal stuff they have that these kids are flocking to theaters to see. Some of it like the werewolf series and all that kind of stuff. And it's fantasies, but people believe and imagine things that are less, if not non-scientific. And so that could be considered insanity. Is this just a bunch of insanity? And I don't mean that in a negative way, because if we determine or you determine that it's insane, that doesn't mean it's bad. Sanitation comes from saneness. Is it pure or impure or less pure? Is it contaminated? Is our vision or our perceptions obscured? That's all that means. Insanity, though, means doing the same thing. That's not what it means, but Albert Einstein said insanity means doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. Now, that's not the most scientific explanation of it, but he just made that statement randomly because he was an experimenter. He was always experimenting and checking and researching, and so he determined that insanity is doing the same thing over and over again the same way and expecting different results. That kind of sounds like religion. We've been doing the same thing the same way for centuries and millennia. And do we expect different results? I remember a profound conversation I had with Billy Graham years ago when he came here for the Oklahoma bombing memorial service in Oklahoma City, and we spent an entire day together, the whole morning, just the two of us and our wives. And he said that he had been in the ministry at that time 50 years preaching the gospel, and it seemed to him he was in that the beginning stage of the Parkinson's, he was actually shaking at the table as we eat breakfast. I remember cutting up his food for him. He said it hurt to even hold a pen. And he was saying it seems like after 50 years of ministering the gospel and preaching all over the world, that the world was actually worse To him, it seemed worse than it was when he started 50 years ago. Here we'd had, at that time, the worst act of terrorism on American soil in human history. Almost 170 or 80 people were killed here in Oklahoma City with a bombing. And he was the speaker, and he was trying to figure out how he was going to talk about it. And I closed it. He was the keynote, and I closed it. The governor had asked me to do that. But I remember he was very pensive that morning and very suspicious, if you will, wondering, are we doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results? Is this a form of insanity? The word insanity is from a Latin word insanias, which meaning not, sanas, healthy, unhealthy. Are we in a state of mind that prevents normal perception? Are we misperceiving things? Are we in a state of mind that presents normal or prevents normal behavior, normal social interaction? Are we seriously, mentally ill? That sounds very slanderous, and I don't mean to sound that way at all, but what about all this stuff? What are we looking for? And is there a better way to approach life or human existence or human encounter? Can things get better? Will they get better? Of course, many times I've heard my parents and other Christians, and I believe for many years things are going to get worse and worse and worse, wax worse, and to the second coming of Jesus, and he's going to fix everything, and all the bad people are going to hell and the good people are going to heaven. It's kind of trite. It's sort of superficial and a little elementary to almost fairy tale-ic. It's like a fairy tale to believe that way, but that's what we've been taught. It's offered a little bit of a placebo, a little comfort in the process. There evidently is some illness out here, or some, I don't like to say illness as much as I like to say inaccuracy, some imperceptions and imperfections, wobbly awkwardness that can be tweaked. Mental illness is defined as a condition which causes serious disorder or lack of order in a person's behavior or thinking. What's the difference in disorder and serious disorder? What is disorder? It just means, or unorderly, it just means out of order or confusion. Disorder suggests a state of confusion, lack of understanding, lack of certainty, ambiguity, insecurity. It's the disruption of peaceful or law-abiding behavior or customs, publicly or personally and privately. You can privately feel disorder and confusion and uncertainty and suspicion and paranoia. That's considered a kind of mental illness. That's a form of insanity, impure or inaccurate thinking. How many of us do that, even in our so-called faith traditions? Interestingly, medicine is sometimes defined as a disruption of normal physical or mental functions. Medicine can change or alter normal physical or mental functions. Medicine can. Drugs, pharmaceuticals. It's one of the Greek renditions of the word sorcery. Sorcerers, root workers, herbalists, people that use herbs and plants and chemicals to come up with a potion to address an issue. Isn't that something? The inference, though, with that statement is that normal physical or mental functions at times need to be disrupted because their normalcy sometimes, or even oftentimes, malfunctions. And then medicine is used to address the dysfunction or the disease or dis-ease or this abnormal condition. So when the normal functions of physicality and mentality shift, then medicine is brought in. Sometimes it's just a change of diet, but it has something to do with chemistry, has something to do with chemicals, has something to do with science, with the experimentation that we call life, or the experience we call life. And I've been talking some about the anatomy of spirit and the science of the soul, or the science of the psyche, the science of consciousness, the energy in the universe, and the infinity of humanity, or the infinity of spirit, the unfinishable, or the part that cannot finish, the part of us that has, as far as we know, no beginning and no end. We don't know where it started. We don't know when or if or how it will end. That's the mystery. And because of these questions, we develop various religions. In the book Learning to Walk in the Dark by Barbara Brown Taylor, she speaks of her guides on a cave expedition in which she and her guides spent some time sitting in a sort of absolute darkness that can only exist deep below the Earth's surface. Now just imagine that. Sitting in absolute darkness for an extended time, something few people ever do or ever will do, can be profoundly upsetting. It can have fright and disorientation and insanity that's off the chain. That's why most people avoid it. I mean, if you can't see anything but darkness before you, behind you, I mean, just like a big wall there, you can become profoundly, especially if you're there like in solitary confinement in some of these prisons. Those people go nuts. The prisoners actually lose their mind. If you go long periods of time and there's nothing but darkness. Miss Taylor writes about this. When it's time to go, she says, I follow Rockwell and Marion back out of the cave again, thinking about what good guides they are. What guides do you have in the caves of your life or in the dark places and spaces? They kept me safe, she says, while letting me practice courage. And boy, does it take a lot of courage to live in darkness or to feel the fingers of obscurity, to simply not know, or to perceive yourself as not knowing, or to be ignorant, and without tangible handles for your faith or your belief system. So she says, they pointed me in the right direction without telling me what to see. A guide points you in the right direction, but doesn't necessarily tell you what to see. Pretty interesting. Professional guides. Do we have them in life? Spiritual guides that points us in the right direction and doesn't necessarily tell us what to see or try to define for us what we see. What do you see in darkness? Because darkness, like silence, has a personality. Darkness brings up imaginations, and silence can be really, really noisy. That's why we tend to avoid silence and we avoid darkness. We love the light and we run around because it's like we're running around from the parts of ourselves that are obscure, that are intimidating, that are frightening. And I think this is part of the journey. Somebody said that, and it makes sense, that life is not about the destination, it's about the journey. But what if the journey is the destination? I mean, the process, without paying that much attention to results. Just embracing the process, the journey. Maybe that is that, because that's the learning experience. That's how you experience and express yourself on the journey. It's not a kind of a coronation. It's a process. And it's taken me, over 50 years to learn that the process is okay, and that the process is trustworthy, that the process is good, that the process is God. It's a part of some wider, higher purpose that we evolve into as we live. She goes on to write about her guides. She says, though they have been here many times in this cave before, they let me explore my own cave. Maybe this is the difference between pastoral counselors and spiritual directors. We go to the counselors when we want help getting out of the caves. We go to the directors when we are ready to be led farther into the caves. I've been in the ministry for 45 years as far as licensed and ordained ministry. I preached many years. I was licensed at 15, ordained at 18. So I'm around people who are always asking for ways out of or through their dark periods. Many of them are the ones who are the guides. The guides are in the same darkness that the guidees are in, except the guides have been there before and they might know their way out a little bit better. But darkness is just darkness. Now, if you can feel your way around and you have a little bit of bearing and you can go through those dark caves, you may be the leader, but you're still in darkness. You just kind of feel your way out. Isn't it interesting that life is not just about what we feel or believe, but about what we think about what we feel and or believe. Because we do feel things and we believe things, and then we think or have opinions about what we feel and about what we believe. I've often said the universe doesn't judge you by what you feel, but why you think about what you feel, and what you think about what you think about what you think about what you feel. So you start with a feeling, you start with a belief. Does feeling inspire belief, or belief inspire feeling? And then what do you think about those belief-inspired feelings, or those feeling-inspired beliefs? These are just questions that you should, I sit here in my house and I ponder these things because I'm very curious about who I am, and maybe also who I'm not, but I'm more encouraged about who I am. Because what I don't know about who I am is who I'm not. They're interrelated. To pastoral counselors who grapple with mental illness or mental health crises, including therapists, psychiatrists, social workers, and all the people who help us out of the cave when we feel like we're running out of oxygen, our work is tedious because we live and walk in and through the same darkness the people we serve do. We're experiencing that same darkness, but we supposedly know how not to allow the darkness to overwhelm us. It's like when I'm on an airplane, and I've flown for the last 40 years, almost 45 years, a lot, hundreds of thousands, millions of miles around the world. And I've been in all kinds of turbulent type experiences on a plane. And some are very violent, very frightening. Most of them aren't terribly violent, but if you're not familiar with flying, those drops, 20 feet drops, and some of those tumultuous times can be quite unnerving. I really rarely ever react or even respond to those situations because I've been through so many of them, and I always tell myself that these pieces of machinery are designed to fly, that they're better in the air than they are on the earth. Now, that doesn't make the storm any less violent, but my response and or reaction to the storm is changed because I tell myself, I'm in an airplane, okay? It's tonnage. All this tonnage is up in 30,000 feet in the air. That it got up here is miracle enough. It can stay, and it usually does. It always has with me. But I'm manipulating, negotiating, and navigating through the darkness or the reality of the same thing everybody else on that plane, from the pilots to the flight attendants to the person in the last row to the person who's flown 100 flights to the person who's on their first flight. And that turbulence is mind-boggling and racking to them. I always look around and look at responses, and I try to find the calmest people. The first time I went through those, I paid first close attention to the flight attendants. If they didn't react, I didn't react, and they're taught not to react. They just keep serving, and they might have to take their seats, and the pilot will come over the air and say, we're going to experiencing a little bit of turbulence for the next few minutes. We've asked our flight attendants to discontinue service for a few minutes till we get through this. We're going to ascend a few feet, or we're going to descend a few feet and try to get around the storm. But they try to give you a little bit of comfort. The storm is still the storm. The turbulence is still the turbulence. The rain, the wind, the lightning, the thunder, whatever's going, it's still going on. But you adjust to it. It's mysterious. It's marvelous. It's fantastic. That's life. That's part of the insanity, if you will, of human reality. It's part of the mental illness and the mental stillness. I'm trying to present mental illness as normal. And I don't want you to get alarmed about it, because you're crazy. So am I. We all crazy. Life is crazy. It's funny, but it ain't no joke, okay? So deal with it. Accept the fact that this stuff is jacked up. But we got to sort through it and not react in panic or in fear. We can manage it. So does faith and prayer work consistently, or are we involved in various aspects of science fiction? Is this just a bunch of science fiction? Well, science fiction is defined as fiction based on imagined future scientific or technological advances and major social or environmental changes. It frequently portrays space or time travel and life on other planets. That's called science fiction. That other things exist, there's time travel, there's life on other planets, There's advancements, there's technology, there's things that can, it's called science fiction because you can't really prove it yet, but it's an ideology or an idea or a hope or an imaginative thing that you hope will someday give you security. That sounds like religion, doesn't it? Science fiction. Science is the intellectual and practical activity encompassing the systematic study of the structure and behavior of the physical and natural world through observation, of course, and experimentation. That's science. It's intellectual, it's practical activity, okay? Fiction is invention or fabrication as opposed to fact. You're making up stuff. It's a belief or statement that is false, but is often held to be true because it is expedient to do so. It's not a true statement. It's not even a factual statement, but we hold it to be true because it's sounds like faith, doesn't it? This whole idea of having faith. Invention or fabrication as opposed to fact. We walk by faith and not by sight. I've done that all my life in a lot of ways. It's a belief or a statement that is false, but that is often held to be true because it is expedient to do so. Does that not sound like various aspects of what we call faith? Forsaking all, I trust him. F, forsaking A, all, I. T, trust, H, him, as if God is a male. But those words have worked, and they've been fun, and they've been a kind of placebo, if you will. We believe they work, so we think they do. We perceive them to. We imagine that they. Could faith and prayer be a kind of placebo? Think about that. It comes from the Latin word placere. Placere, which means to please, to placate. You know, I shall please. It's a harmless pill or medicine or procedure prescribed more for the psychological benefit of the patient than for any physiological effect. That's what a placebo is. I heard a doctor friend tell me that 81% of people who use placebos improve because they believe that they're being properly treated. And blue pills work better than red pills for some reason. Isn't that something? Or the more expensive the medication, the more the person is prone to believe that it would work. A lot of it's psychosomatic. Psyche is the mind, soma is the body. Have you ever noticed that Viagra sounds like Niagara? Those are mental hidden persuaders. You take Viagra, boy. Some of those are placebos. The number one, however, prescribed drug for those 18 to 50 is antidepressants. Again, mental illness is defined as a condition which causes serious disorder in a person's behavior or thinking. Depression is a kind of mental illness. And people go through that. So if 81% of the people who are prescribed drugs between 18 and 50 are being prescribed antidepressants. Why all the depression? Why all the despondency? Why all the mental illness or confusion or insecurity? Why all the uncertainty? Why all the speculation or paranoia or fear? What is the basis of all of that? In most cases, insane people or those who are severely mentally ill have religious moorings in there somewhere, at least in this country. In countries where there's a less religion, there tends to be less emphasis on that. But these whole ideas about a scary God and a scary Jesus or a scary apocalyptic revelation, the end of the world, demons, being reprobate, rejected by God, not standing the test is what reprobate means, ultimately rejected, eternal judgment, damnation, sin, hell, purgatory, demons, vexations, torment. That's all in our religious presuppositions, and it has people really, really frightened. Dr. Joe Dispenza, he has a thing called epigenetics, and it's brilliant. He says the moment you feel the way you think the way you feel, and vice versa. The moment you feel the way you think the way you feel, and vice versa. Your body believes what you think, and you think what your body feels. Often the body is conditioned to be in the mind. The body is conditioned to be in the mind. It tends to be the leader and controller from sex to appetite. The body, the soma, the flesh dictating to spirit. Isn't that something? And they can go the other way around, but again, the moment you feel the way you think the way you feel. And the moment you think the way you feel is the moment you feel the way you think. Brilliant comment by Dr. Dispenza. If knowledge is power, then knowledge about yourself is self-empowerment. And that's why we bring these teachings and these discussions. I'm still studying myself. I'm not insecure, but I'm not totally secure with me because I'm so dynamic, and so are you. We're so complex. We're so unique and divine and magnificent and creative. And the more we get to know ourselves, the more we self-empower. And we feel more in control and less a victim of circumstances or of creation or of destiny. That we actually chose to come here and that we are part of the decision-making process. That we can choose to create the reality we desire. You can do that. I'm encouraging you to do that. So let me close by saying, embrace your mental illness. Study it and respect it. And see illness not as a just disease, but the dis-ease or the tension of being human and how we take that tension, give it attention, and then become intentional about it. Carlton Pearson, Expanded Consciousness. Peace is possible. See you again next time.